Welcome to the Livin'Sky podcast, a show about raising connected, resilient kids in a world that often forgets what they need most. I'm Lena Livin'Sky, a pediatric speech-language pathologist, holistic feeding specialist, and a mom, here to help you understand your child's body, behavior, and biology in a whole new way. Each episode brings you simple, practical tools to support healthy eating, development, and family connection without the overwhelm. Thanks for listening. I'm so glad you're here. Let's dive in. Today's guest, Greer McGuinness, brings a perspective that I know will resonate with so many of you listening. Greer is a registered dietitian and functional medicine practitioner with a master's of science in health science with a focus in epidemiology. She's also a clinical lab educator with extensive experience in areas like pediatric nutrition, toxins, Lyme disease, and environmental health, and is the founder of Biomedical Healing for Kids. Her work focuses heavily on supporting children, especially in understanding things like heavy metals, mold, and overall toxin burden, and how those factors can impact a child's health and development. But what makes her work especially meaningful is how it all began. After spending years in the conventional medical system and even working as a chief clinical dietitian, everything shifted when her son regressed into autism. That experience led her to start asking deeper questions and ultimately explore a more functional, whole-body approach to health. Since then, she combined her clinical background with her personal experience to help families look beyond surface-level symptoms and better understand what's happening inside the child's body. In today's conversation, we're diving into what it really means to support a child from the inside out, how to think about the body as a whole, and how parents can begin to make sense of all the information out there without feeling overwhelmed. Greer, welcome to the Livin'Sky podcast. I'm really glad you're here.
Thanks for having me.
I've been wanting to have you on for so long because I love how unapologetically you are, and you just let it all out, kind of on the internet and everywhere else. And I think that's so refreshing because we need to have these like really meaningful conversations.
Yeah, I blame the fact that I'm from New York,
I think that's why I love it.
part of it. But I kind of felt like with a lot of influencers out there, we are not being sometimes very truthful with a lot of these hard conversations. And it's okay to disagree. It's okay to not be on the same page or have a different viewpoint, but it doesn't mean that others carry the same feelings and viewpoints. And we have to take that into consideration with these tough topics on our kids and realize that it's okay to have these tough conversations and just kind of look at things from different angles.
Absolutely. I think that's so important. So you do talk about these practitioners online and influencers on Instagram and who are kind of selling these autism cures and often misleading parents. And unfortunately, parents, maybe without lack of better direction, sometimes trusted, and they will purchase these products that are promising these amazing results. What is your take on that? If you can talk about this a little bit more, what is your view on working with these types of influencers, and what should parents look for if they want to work with a provider that is really working in their best interest?
Yeah. So, I mean, we're in the wild, wild west of social media.
Mhm.
And everyone wants to be an expert. And I think at one point these people had really good hearts where they wanted to help people, but then they realized they could make a lot of money off of it because if you know somebody's child is suffering, or you know a parent who has a nonverbal child with autism would do anything and pay anything to hear their child speak for the first time. And so when you have people who are very good at marketing, making bold claims and bold statements. I cured my son. I made my son start speaking and things like that. They reeled you in with a pain point because they know exactly what you're looking for and what you're researching, and they're going to capitalize on that.
Mhm.
Now most of these people online have like a certification training online. They paid somebody a couple $100, maybe $1,000, and did a couple weeks of an online training course, and now they're a practitioner. It's not a regulated term, which is very dangerous. So anyone can call themselves a practitioner. Okay,
Mhm.
my son who's 12 could call himself a practitioner technically. So it's not a regulated term. The difference is you and I can say we are licensed practitioners.
Right.
So we went through the proper channels of doing 4 years of undergrad, I did my internship, I sat for my boards exam, I then went further for my master's degree, and then I did some certification trainings, which were great. I mean, I love certification trainings because they just help bridge that gap and just say, "Hey, you can kind of learn a little bit more," like I did with Lyme disease. I really wanted to learn more about Lyme disease, and there's not a lot of, like, courses out there. I
Hmm.
took some certification trainings on Lyme disease. The problem is they are selling a one size fits all approach. They can't do labs. They don't know how to interpret labs.
Yeah.
And what they're doing is they took whatever worked for their child or what they've researched in for free in groups or on chat GBT and AI and stuff. And what they do is they package everything in a nice little bow and they sell it to you for a large amount of money, whether it be one-on-one, consultations with you or a program online, module program. And it's a one size fits all approach. And like a broken clock is right twice a day. They might get it right a couple times. I mean, it's not rocket science in some aspects of this, but with those more complicated kids or kids who have a lot more going on, a lot deeper, they're not gonna get it right, and then you've wasted time, energy, and money going down a hole that wasn't correct for your child, and that's what we don't have, time, energy, and money, okay? We
Absolutely.
wanna get it right the first time around as best we can. And so, I try to explain to a lot of parents, one of the first things we need to do is you need to vet this person. You
Hmm.
need to go Google their name, research them, like ask around in Facebook groups. I mean, there's tons of these biomedical groups. You can ask around and moms love to talk. Mom loves to tell experiences and stuff. And that's part of the problem is like a lot of these practitioners or fake practitioners, I guess we should say that do these things. No one gets a platform to allow the negative reviews to come out. Okay, and that's part of the downfall is, like, all you hear is fake reviews or positive reviews, you never hear the negative, and again, I'm not ever saying that no one's ever said something negative about me. I mean, we're practitioners. I
Right.
work really hard with every single patient to do it everything I possibly can to go above and beyond, but, I mean, I've sold ebooks before too and things like that, and I've only had ever one person write me back and say, "I've been doing this for 20 years. I thought maybe you had more in your ebook. Is it possible to get a refund?" That's the only person I've ever had
Hmm.
ask for a refund on my ebook.
Yeah.
So those are the things, the nuances that we need to be careful of and make sure that we're aware that not everyone is a medical professional as much as they say, and we can't make those claims and statements. You and I cannot say we cure something, we can do those things. And so if somebody's saying those things, they're not legit. Ask the person where they went to college, where they went to school, what their certifications are, what their license is, and ask around in Google because 'cause you'll find a lot of information, especially in the mom groups.
Oh, definitely. I think moms are the best detectives and the best resource always.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I want to backtrack a little bit and talk about your story, how you got into this, because you are a registered dietitian. That's, I think, that was the initial license that you have had. So I know your son regressed into autism at 19 months, and that really shifted everything for you and started to make you think and look outside of the box. So can you take us back to that time and what was that experience like for you as a mom?
Yeah, I mean, I've been working in healthcare for about 8 years or so when he regressed. And at that time, I was a chief clinical dietitian, so I was in charge of all other dietitians and the food service directors and the kitchen and stuff like that, and I felt I was working full time and I had, a sitter watching him, and I remember she called me on a Friday and was like, "Greer, I just wanted to let you know, like, something's off. Like, he just hasn't spoken. He hasn't said my name. Like, he used to like, say her name all the time, used to say phrases, used to say, a lot of words and stuff." And she was like, this whole week, she was like a completely different kid. And being a first time mom, I mean, I wasn't paying attention. I was coming home, my husband was working evenings or I think and or long hours and I just, come home, would do dishes and feeding and, trying to get ready for the next day. So I guess, I really didn't put two and two together until that weekend and I like watched him. And I was like, he wouldn't even like look at me. He wouldn't even like say any, he wouldn't say mom, like wouldn't say anything. And I was like, what is going on? Like, this is just so I've never seen anything like this before, and I did clinicals in pediatrics, and that's not what we learned about autism, like, autism was delayed from birth, like, you knew, you
Right.
so I went and I spoke to a speech therapist, and he was like, "Get early intervention and stuff, but we have to wait till he's 2." So I felt like forever. It felt like 4 months I had to wait, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, like, can we speed this process up?"
Yeah.
And when they came, they were like, "Oh, yeah, no, he meets the criteria now." And I was like, "What the heck happened to my kid?" Like, and it was funny because I had had him evaluated at 9 months and 15 months for completely different reasons for feeding issues, because he was gaining weight, but he was only gaining like a pound a month, and my pediatrician was like, "I just wish he was gaining more because he was just like a peanut." And I was like, "Well, my husband and I are not big people." And I looked at my husband's, like, medical chart from when he was a baby, and they were, like, identical. So I
Mm.
wasn't really concerned because he looked like my husband, like, I mean, he just
Yeah.
was like, he probably just same growth, like, he's eating, sleeping, peeing, pooping, like, happiest baby in the entire world, like, I wasn't concerned. And so we went to GI, ruled everything out, and then she was like, let's look at feeding therapy." And at the time, my husband and I were just living paycheck to paycheck. Like,
Mhm.
we didn't have money. If he needed, like, therapy 2 to 3 times a week, like, I couldn't pay a $35 copay every single time.
Mhm.
And my pediatrician was like, "No, let's do early intervention because if he does qualify, it's for free." And I was like, "Great, that's amazing."
Mhm.
So, they came out at 9 months and checked on his feeding with a bottle and stuff and feeding orally, and they made some recommendations of just, like, I was a first-time mom, I didn't know that there were different types of bottles that with different types of nipple tops that work better for certain kids. I had no idea, no one ever explained that to me, and so we made some changes and things started going great. He started gaining a little bit more weight and he was fine, everything was great. And the speech therapist says, "Listen, we could come back at like 15 months and just recheck. It's free." And I was like, "Great, this is amazing services." So I was so excited. They came back out at 15 months. The first was a speech therapist and a physical therapist, and then the second people who came out that 15 month was a speech therapist and occupational therapist, and both times, there were no red flags for my son.
Mm.
Okay, and they were looking at everything because why? Because that's what their assessments are supposed to be, just overall, anything that's a red flag, anything that needs to be captured, anything. So they left and they were like, "He's doing great. This is amazing. He's eating, he's drinking, like, he's progressing." Like, he was doing puzzles, he was interacting with the woman on the floor, doing everything, and so, like, for me, when he regressed, I was like, "What just
Right.
happened?"
Right.
So when people say that I missed those red flags, that the regression wasn't real, that I must have missed it, I was like, "Well, then he must have fooled 5, 6 different people."
All
And,
of it. Yeah.
all these amazing therapists who are qualified to assess and to find those things that they completely miss. So I knew something was going on in my heart, but everyone else and the pediatrician and everybody else and the therapist and stuff were just like, "No, no, this is just how autism presents itself nowadays." And I was just
Make it make sense, kind of like, what does
didn't make
that mean?
yeah,
Yeah.
I go, "But this wasn't how I learned autism, and this doesn't make it if like, how is a 19-month-old just magically regress? Like, how does that like, I don't know, it just took me a long time to kinda realize that my gut feeling was right.
So what was the first thing that you started to do outside of that conventional model to start to learn more about this and to perhaps do some kind of different treatment with him?
Yeah, so I had what I call her my token crunchy nurse friend.
She sounds wonderful.
Yeah, so, it was when, like, elderberry where it was being really big on Facebook and all the moms were selling elderberry and stuff like that. So she was a nurse, and she was selling elderberry, and we had talked a couple of times. She's a really nice woman, and she knew about my son and I had been complaining or I was venting to her one day about something. I mean, Keegan, I think, was about 4-ish and just like, progress was super slow. We were doing all the therapies. I mean, he was in school and she was like, there are some Facebook groups that I found. She was always just leaving me breadcrumbs. She was never pushing because she
Yeah.
knew how like stern I was. And she was like, "You should just join some of these Facebook groups. Some of the things that these moms are posting is just like, it's incredible. Like, you should just really look into it." And I was like, all right, like my curiosity got the best of me.
Yeah.
And I joined some of the Facebook groups and I was blown away by what the moms were sharing in there, like research and testimonials and looking at different products and labs. Like they were sharing all these different labs that I didn't even know existed in this world. And I was like, what is this? And I started getting curious. So I found a integrative DO in my area and I reached out. He did adults, but I reached out to him and I said, "Listen, I'm a practitioner too. I can order these labs. I don't know what I'm doing. Like, I don't know how to interpret. Like, can you help me?" And he was like, "Absolutely." And he did. So I started running labs and realizing for the first time my son's labs were coming back abnormal. And like I was like, I knew something wasn't right. All these things like started coming to light and I was like, this is like incredible. This is what I was looking for. So I started taking the labs and then starting to do supplements and interventions and within like several weeks my son's speech like exploded.
Wow. Just several weeks.
Mhm.
Wow. How
Yeah.
old was he at that point?
He was about 4.5.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. And I remember because like this kid had never wrote his ABCs before ever. Like, he was almost 4 a little over 4.5, and he had never, like, written ABCD, like, on a board, like, never held a pen, like, never even colored. Like, he didn't even, like, have any interest in that. And I remember I was coming out of the shower, and he was sitting on one of those, like, little kid chairs in the living room, and he had my dry erase board. I don't know, like, he must have gotten it from the refrigerator, and he was sitting down, and he was, like, writing his ABCs for the first time. And I remember running and grabbing my phone to take a video of it with a towel around me, like and my husband's, like, looking at me like, "What did you do?" I'm like, "I don't know." I said, "I gave him some supplements. I don't know what I did over here." And it just kept progressing. Then he, like, wrote his name, and then he started coloring for the first time, and it was like all of a sudden, it was like everything clicked. And I didn't tell his ABA therapist or anything like that, and we were doing ABA in the home, and that summer, he had had a VB MAPS, assessment done for verbal behavioral, assessment. He was about a 56. So he was, like, severely verbally delayed over the summertime when he was a little over 4.5. And then that's when I had started a lot of the supplements and interventions, and by the time he was 5, around February of that year, they repeated the VB MAP score and it dropped to a 6. Like,
Wow.
it was, like, incredible.
That's phenomenal. Wow.
Like, cause my kid at 4.5, like, if you put him into like, in the kitchen and be like, "Hold up a fork," he'd be like, "What's this?" And he'd just look at you, like, he wouldn't be able to label anything. Didn't know what it like, couldn't say cup, couldn't say then you at 5, you could put him in a kitchen and be like, "Fork, spoon, like, knife." Like, he could label, like, everything.
Wow.
It was it
Wow.
was it was truly something that, like, if I didn't see it, I would have never believed it in a million years.
Yeah. And it is sometimes hard to believe, right? Especially because of the messaging we hear in the conventional world that it's all about just therapy, it's all about just this, because I feel like that's the first recommendations that parents get. It's usually ABA, and then they'll get like the therapies, right? And that's what's covered by insurance. So I think unless you start looking into this side of treatment and this holistic view, unfortunately, you can miss out on a lot of these benefits, which is a shame. I really wish this was the first route that we took with these kids versus covering therapies, which are amazing in their own, but they're just like one piece of the puzzle. We need to be addressing so much more.
And if we look at therapies alone, we're treating every single kid with the same interventional therapies for every
Yeah,
single kid with autism, but yet then we're saying no two kids with autism are exactly the same. So, as much as therapies have helped, I mean, the first 2 years, not much happened. And then once we did biomedical with therapies, it was like everything started clicking together.
right.
Why are we still treating every child like they're the same and doing OT, PT, like it's helpful to a certain degree, but
I
you're
agree.
doing blanket protocols across the board for every
Right.
kid.
Well, but also a lot of the problem is, I think, too, is like when the child is not cognitively able to grasp what you're trying to teach them. Like, how do we reach them because sometimes you have the kids who are just sometimes literally not present with you because they're focusing on something else, right? It's like I remember struggling so much as a speech therapist with these kids because I didn't know how to bring them in unless you're being like crazy silly. And that also didn't always work, right? So to me, especially for the kids who are just not able to really focus on these things too, like we're completely missing the boat. Like there's just not much that you can do with them, unfortunately, because you're trying these behavioral therapies and they're just, that's not their biggest need right now. I'm a huge believer that light is one of the most powerful medicines for our kids and for us. That's why I love Bon Charge. Their blue light blocking glasses, red light therapy devices, and many other products are designed to support your circadian rhythm and help your family sleep and feel better naturally. In our modern world of screens and artificial light, these small shifts make a big difference. Calmer evenings, deep sleep, better focus, and happier moods. I use Bon Charge products every single day, and even my son has his own pair of blue light blocking glasses for evening story time. You can check out all their products at boncharge.com and use code LENAL to save 15% off your purchase.
Yeah. And I think that was my son too, is like he just wasn't like a like it was absorbed to a certain degree, but like that was as far as it went.
Right. I just feel like his body was working probably so much. And clearly, I'm just throwing it out there, but probably working so much to trying to detox and trying to do these things, right? And using all that brain power and energy to focus on on healing, and then maybe not having as much reserve for that cognitive task that we're
Yeah.
trying to be portrayed in therapy.
Exa
Yeah. So over the last 5 to 10 years, we've learned a lot about autism. And one of the things that is kind of booming and more obvious is that autism is now being portrayed as a medical diagnosis, not a genetic diagnosis. And it's rare for it to have a genetic origin, which I feel like back in the day, that was the thing that we used to hear. And sometimes we still do, where it's just genetic, right? It's just genetic. This is just who they are. So could you elaborate a little bit about this and give parents an accurate view of autism?
So, if we're looking back at science of autism, like we really, science-wise, we're so much more advanced in science than ever before. So back then, when we first identified autism and we kind of said like what is this and what's causing it, because they were looking, scientists are looking at cause. There probably was some genetic factors with certain people. There's a lineage of, they can follow it. And then for other people, it'd be like spontaneous genetic abnormalities, no different than like Down syndrome, just like a spontaneous de novo thing that happened in utero. And, so now, that narrative has been pushed so much. So that's where people still only think autism is just genetic.
Yeah.
And we have research, and even the DSM-5 doesn't say autism is just genetic. It says it's a multifaceted, like multi-leveled diagnosis. So we have to stop just saying it's just genetic, because if it's just genetic, then how is it that the rates have increased astronomically so much? I understand we can detect it better and things, but the problem is we could detect it better early on, but the rate in which we're, using the scientific rates are for kids ages 8 and above. So even if we did detect it better, kids might often drop their diagnosis before they're 8, but we're only catching the ones from 8 and above, 8 years and above.
Yeah.
So we know now, and we have had research in the past to show where, for instance, like lead poisoning. Back in the 60s and 70s, lead was a really big problem, not only just in house, but in gasoline and things like that. And there was an article and a lot of research studies that came out that said it was something like 8 million or more, 8 billion IQ points were lost for people and children during that time because of lead exposure. So we know with lead that it can cause cognitive delay, speech delay, cognitive deficit, poor focus, ADHD. Like we know lead, because of the significant issue it had in the 60s and 70s, can cause a lot of these symptoms. So scientists have often looked and go, "Oh wow, well if lead can cause that, if autism is just a criteria diagnosis, it's not a blood test. So it basically comes in, and if it you meet these criteria on a piece of paper, you get a diagnosis of autism, but the cause is still unknown for every single person." if we understand and look at the brain structure and everything else and other research studies, we found higher levels of heavy metals in kids with autism and ADHD. We found higher levels of oxidative stress and lower levels of glutathione in kids. It's like the biochemistry differences have been identified to go, "Oh, this is weird. Like, why is this happening?" Versus this is just a genetic, they can't all have genetic
Right.
abnormalities. It's not feasible anymore to use that statement.
Mhm. No, I agree, right? Because otherwise, I feel like we would have seen so many more cases back in a day, right? If it was just genetic and biological, why are we all of a sudden exploding with the rate of autism? Why is it getting bigger? Why is it larger in other some states versus the other? Why is it different in different countries if it was all genetic, right? I feel like that explanation just is just not there.
Even those with diagnosed with profound autism or high support needs autism have grown astronomically too. So that's not genetic either. So we have to kinda take a step back and go, "Okay, what are we missing?" And I don't think it's a bad thing that we do that because I think that's really good, but the problem is everyone is just so convinced and so just want us to say put their foot down and say it's just genetic that we
Yeah.
can't keep doing that with when it's kids' lives and their, you
Right.
know, and parents and families are at stake.
Yeah, especially since we have resources to help these kids. But we just have to say, okay, maybe we do have to look outside of the box because maybe it is appropriate now. Maybe is the time to do that. We're just living in such a toxic world right now. Unfortunately, we're going to have to take a look at what we're doing in our environment. We're going to have to take a look at all these things because clearly our kids are getting sicker and sicker, not only with autism and ADHD, but with other things, right? Like eczema is like 1 in 5 right now. There's just so many chronic diseases happening in our children. And I think for the first time ever, where our generation is not supposed to live as long as our parents, like we're getting sicker and sicker. So I think it is time to really take a look at what we're doing, what we're recommending.
Yeah, and even the CDC had stated that over 40% of kids have at least one chronic health condition. Over
Mm.
40%, and I think it's higher. I think it's probably around 50 or more, and that's a problem. Like, if more than half the children in the United States have some type of chronic health condition, we should be looking into that.
It could be. What you think? I think it's time. Yeah. So, what have been some of your favorite tools or therapies you've used with your son that have kind of moved the needle for him? And what tools have you noticed? And I know every child is very different, but what tools have you noticed that have been helpful for your patients?
Yeah, so testing, functional lab testing. I do pretty much testing on all my patients. It's how it what's guides my protocols.
Hmm.
Everything is individualized to that particular child.
Mm.
Okay, so we're looking at, stool testing, we're looking at toxins, sometimes we're looking at brain and, blood testing and things like that. So we are using labs to help figure out what is going on inside that child. And that's what I did with my son. I did every test under the sun with my son and was like, I'm not leaving any stone unturned. I want to know exactly what's going on inside his body. That was really important to me. So that was incredible. We were in the Duke University stem cell treatment trial, the impact study several years ago. That was great. I definitely saw big improvements with stem cells. I am a big fan of stem cells and another intervention called TrueDose, which is using platelet therapy. It's your own blood platelets, and that gets re-put back into your system. And we saw great improvements with that as well. We've done things like brain balance, and so while the foundation, like working on his diet, working on detoxing in his gut, and all those things had astronomically gave us so much. Sometimes there's a beyond. Sometimes there's so much more that we can do. And these other therapies and other alternative interventions have been just as helpful, especially as he's been getting older. I think for me, it's, every kid is so different. And I always say, don't knock it till you try it kind of thing. And
Yeah.
sometimes we have to kind of take a step back and go, okay, where is the kid now? And what are the best interventions? For instance, real quick, I just had a mom email me to work with her kid who is a bit older, and she had been doing biomedical, like working on diet, working on labs. Like she's probably spent thousands of dollars working on different labs, like organic acid stool testing and working with their kid, and they're still not seeing the results. And I said, I think it's time that you go and do something beyond that now. Like, you did all this stuff and it got you as far as you could go, and that's okay. But now there's this beyond, and I have a free ebook if anyone ever wants it. It's called Beyond the Basics. And I sent it to mom and I said, "Here, read through this and let me know if you have any questions, because maybe it's time that you go and you look at different alternative interventions that might be helpful, because sometimes if the foundations have already been worked on and you saw what the improvements that you could that far, you have to go and do something else. You now have to work on the brain. You now have to do these other things that could give you that bigger umph that you need now."
Yeah, amazing. Yeah, and we'll include that link to the ebook in the show notes. So if anybody's interested, I think that's great. So then what's your take on like I feel like a lot of recommendations out there are going gluten-free, casein-free, that's super helpful and I have heard that every child on the spectrum or ADHD should be on that diet. What's your take on that?
Yes and no. So, I've had and tested kiddos with dairy and stuff, and they've had no issues, and so every kid is incredibly different. There are tests out there that do help guide us in if, gluten and dairy could be problematic. I think in general, like gluten and it is overly processed, overly pesticide, sprayed and things like that. So, as a health standpoint, it's not the greatest thing to be consuming all the time, but for some of our kids, it really impacts their gut, it really impacts their brain. But I also know that with every kid, we can't always remove it because of how picky they are right now. And we're having with their selective eating, and it kinda can sometimes can take time to remove it, um, but is it a good starting point? That
Mhm.
100%. Some kids do amazing with it. When we removed gluten, my son is going to develop celiac disease at some point in time in his life. His levels were all elevated. He carries the genetic marker. He just didn't have celiac disease yet, but gluten was significantly impacting not only his gut, but his brain. So for us, removing gluten was absolutely the best thing we ever did. Dairy has no impact on him whatsoever.
Mhm. Yeah,
So, it just depends on the child, but I have other kiddos that once they removed it, it was like night and day for their
yeah,
child.
right. So for the parents who are starting to look into this journey, what is the testing they recommend that they do so they can actually find out if it impacts their child?
So I do something called the wheat zoomer and the dairy zoomer. It's a blood test, which I know is not everyone's favorite thing to do with a kid, but it really helps us look at the protein peptides and see if they're reacting or not to those proteins in the system. I also do when we do stool testing and stuff, we could see the gluten in sometimes in the stool causing inflammation, and then we do the genetic markers to see if they have potentially the celiac genetic markers,
Okay.
which could be an impactful thing.
Okay. And this stool testing, is that typically a GI map or something like
I do
that?
the GI map for my patients, that's what I do specifically for my
Yeah,
kids.
I like the GI map as well. What I like about it is that it gives you a good breakdown on the pathogens also in your gut. I feel like it gives you like a really good picture of what's happening.
Yeah.
Clearly, it's not perfect because we don't understand the microbiome, but I think it is a good snapshot in time to know what's going on right now.
So the reasons why I'm a lab snob when it comes to testing, because people come to me with testing all the time.
Yeah,
And there are some times where I say, "I hate to be this person, but I think you need to do a different test," because they're not all created equal.
right.
And the reason why I like certain tests, is because some tests only show us the bad. And, that's a problem because we also need to know what's good in the gut
Yes.
or low if there's a specific microorganism that's really beneficial to the gut, like for instance, Akkermansia. Akkermansia is this specific one that helps with insulin resistance and blood sugar regulation, but it also helps the mucus lining on the gut and protects the gut for leaky gut. So, like, if I have a kiddo and I do a stool test on them, or I get a stool test from a different company that doesn't look at that marker, and all I see is bad, and you just keep killing things because, oh, they have yeast overgrowth and they have this and that, and you could just completely deplete that guy, okay? And maybe it was already low to begin with, and now it's gonna be really, really low.
Yeah.
So, I need to look at the good stuff too, as much as I'm looking at the bad stuff. So, that's why I love the GI map, because I can see all the good stuff too and say, "Oh, wow, this one's really important for inflammation. We have to boost him up because he's like the referee to keep all the inflammation down."
Mhm.
Or these 2 are important for serotonin and dopamine production for the brain, like, so we have to be mindful of that as well.
Absolutely. Yeah, I have found that the GI map is very comprehensive when it comes to that. I've done it myself on me twice, so
Yeah.
I'm a fan.
Oh, yeah, I do it. We're annual users over here.
Oh, for sure, that makes sense, but I love it's the whole family, right?
Yeah.
Which
Yeah.
is
Yeah,
so
I mean,
great.
because it's helpful, especially if a kid gets really sick or if your kid needs antibiotics. I mean, it's always good to do one post antibiotic treatment too, or post like a GI bug and see what's going on because that's how you protect yourself and that's how you rebuild your gut.
So for practitioners, because you have mentioned that, you had your clinical degree, but then you did a lot of certifications and you learned how to read labs later. How did you go about reading and like being so versed in so many different labs?
A lot of late nights.
Yeah, I bet.
So when I first started with Keegan, and at the time, if we're going back, I mean, 10 years a little bit, it's not like it was today. So like reading was still like reading a book and like going and looking at biochemistry. I mean, I still had, and I'm sometimes feel like I'm a pack rat and I never throw things away. And I actually found all of my old books from school from when I was doing my bachelor's, and I had found, like, my advanced clinical nutrition and stuff like that, which had, like, the citric acid cycle and all that stuff, and I was like, "I always said I would never need this again," and I was so wrong, and so I took out my books, and I was, like, highlighting and researching and learning and going, "Okay," like, understanding concepts more of, like, the human body and what was going on, so I basically took his labs and used them as cliff note versions of, like, understanding what was going on, and then I left healthcare and actually got my first job working for a functional lab company that helped train me too, as well as just doing continuing education stuff and learning stuff on my own and diving in, and that's
Yeah.
the biggest thing, and especially because there was nothing in pediatrics. That was the hardest part is there was really nothing in pediatrics, so I was kind of, like, trying to take what I learned for adults and modify it more to pediatrics and
Mhm.
understanding the different concepts. So, I would love to say that there is a specific training that I did, but I
Yeah.
can't. It's just been years of doing and testing kids and putting and connecting the dots for them as well.
Oh, for sure, for sure. I feel like we're always learning, and that's the beauty of being a practitioner. It's like you continue to learn and bloom in some way. And if you're interested, there's just so much knowledge to be had and to continue to grow as a clinician and as a mom, as a person. It's amazing.
Absolutely.
So what I know you talk about your son having RFID, right? He has a diagnosis. So have you also seen improvement with that diagnosis once you started to work with him on, and on all the things you're trying with this holistic mindset? Have you noticed that his eating has also improved?
These days when your child refuses everything you make and you just want them to have something nourishing, that's when I grab Signals. It's a real food meal replacement shake made with organ meats, minerals, and nutrients that support kids' biology, not just fill them up. It's rich in iron, zinc, and B vitamins, the building blocks for growth, focus, and strong immune systems. And it's great for the gut. And the best part? Nate calls it his ice cream shake. That's how delicious it is. And as a mom, it feels amazing to know he's getting what his body truly needs without the fight. You can learn more at feedyoursignals.com and don't forget to use Lena10 at checkout for 10% off your purchase.
So when we first started and a lot of parents would say in like the Facebook groups, "Oh, once we worked on the gut, once we detoxed, like his feeding and issues and stuff went away." So I was like, "Oh my gosh, this is going to be great because then he's going to be like the best eater." And that didn't happen for us, unfortunately. So I can honestly say though, after the Duke University stem cell treatment study, I definitely saw a big change in him during that time. And then when we did brain balance as well, we definitely saw a little bit of a shift when I understood that his sensory system was off. And it was interesting because I had gotten him to try a tuna fish sandwich. I don't even remember how I got him to try that. But when I asked him what it tasted like, and you'll find this funny as a SLP, he goes, "Well, it tasted like a peanut butter and jelly sandwich." And I was like, "They're not even in the same ballpark. Like, how would you even compare those 2 side by side?" But then I realized his sense of taste and everything was completely off.
Mhm.
So that started to make a lot more sense to me. We're also Duke University had an ARFID study that they were doing, and I was able to sign up, and they were working it was like a randomized program where it was either kid focused or parent focused, and we actually got the parent focused one where I had to sit with Keegan on the calls with a psychologist, and they had all these different ways of working with the kid. They had like games and prizes and things. And then it was great because even afterwards, they had set up for quite some time, like a Sunday afternoon with just all the kids. So, like, all the boys that were in the group would be on like a Zoom together, just hanging out, talking, and trying different foods and stuff. So, it was just such a different thing. And I think that as he's gotten older, we've been able to shift and change things. Is it still a struggle? Yeah. Like the other day, like mango. I said, "Oh, Keek, like, let's try a bite of mango." "No, I don't want to." I'm like, "It's gonna be okay. Like, I think you might really like it. Like, you've tried other foods. Like, let's just see." So he takes it on the fork and he's like, the tiniest,
Mhm.
teeny tiniest little. Like, did you even taste it? Did you even get it in your mouth? So certain things are still a struggle. However,
Yeah.
we have been able to expand his diet astronomically over the years, and I think sometimes it is time and cognition and just development and maturity too. Everything has helped, but yeah, like, he tried, like, a piece of mango, he ate it, and I was like, "Oh, you want more?" "No."
Yeah.
I'm
No,
like, "Really?"
that was very sensory rich, like, right from mango. I
So
know.
and it's so funny what he gravitates towards, and it would be things that I would never think that he would, so I've learned to take a step back and say, "No, he's not gonna try that," or, "No, he won't like that," because he
Yeah.
sometimes does.
Yeah, and I think it's important as parents to remember that, like, we have these preconceived idea of what our child will like and you won't, and sometimes you're going to shield them and be like, "You're not gonna try that." And I
Yeah,
think sometimes just having it out there and letting them have the exposure is definitely they can surprise you.
yeah,
They
absolutely.
definitely can. Yeah. Okay, so how do you balance kind of looking at biology without losing sight of things like environment, connection, and skill building? How do you just essentially look at the environment in a way that is like very supportive for him? How do you guide your patients to do that as well, or your clients to do that?
The testing helps a lot. So I do test my
Hmm.
patients for toxins.
Hmm.
So we do kinda get a feel of the toxic load and the toxic environment for
Hmm.
that person. But what I also look at is also the environment of just overall health.
Yeah.
The stressful environment. Is mom stressed out? So if I get a mom on the call who's like, "Oh, I need to do this, I need to do this, I need to detox it." I'm like, "Okay, this." Sometimes, like and I learned this from my son. My son's actually pretty in tune with me.
Hmm.
Like, I feel like sometimes, like, he could feel my anxiety or my frustration or, and then I can feel his emotions a lot more than other people might. So, I tell my families, "Okay, we need to take a big step, giant step back and breathe for a minute
Yeah.
and just kinda go, what are we prioritizing? We need to prioritize because if mom is sitting here trying to Google and researching a mattress, a toxic mattress, but we still haven't worked on the food. There
Hmm.
needs to be a priority of stuff. Okay,
Right.
that's the last priority right now. The first priority is like, let's get filtered water. Your water is not the greatest. Your kid has high amounts of heavy metals. Let's filter out the water. Let's just start that. Let's start washing our fruits and vegetables a little bit better. Let's just start focusing on more whole foods. Like let's try to take the pressure. So a lot of families will start working. They're like, "Oh, should we do supplements and the diet and stuff?" I said, "Let's just do the supplements. Let's just start getting supplements, getting into a routine and stuff. Let's not change their whole entire world because if I go in a lot of times and try to change too many things, the kids will shut down."
Yeah.
So we try to just do one thing at a time, get the families involved and settled, get the kids involved and settled, and then kind of work on everything else.
Yeah. No, I agree. So these are some of your basics that you usually recommend. Are there any others that you really look at when you're starting to work with a family?
Mostly just how like where the kid's at too. I recently have a kid who's just, up all night having like really bad behaviors and stuff. So right now, sometimes what we have to do is address certain things really quickly. And it just really, I want to meet the kid where they're at and see where we can get a kid or a person to be at a baseline before trying to do
Yeah.
anything. So sometimes it's just understanding where your patient is at and the family and meeting them there. A lot of times, I'll be honest, I let my families ask me whatever questions they want. Because I feel like us parents, like, when I went to go talk to somebody, like a specialist, I had, like, my laundry list of questions. And, like, and I feel like a lot of my families have so many questions and that they've asked other people and they didn't get straight answers like I ever did. So I let my families just do, like, a brain dump. Get it all out there. Let's talk about all the good, the bad, the ugly. Ask me any questions you want. Like, let's just talk about anything that's weighing on your mind that you need, like, some type of clarity or answer for, and I feel like that really helps parents, like, kinda calm and focus.
Yeah. I agree. Almost kind of like letting them know they're finally seen. Because
Yeah,
sometimes you bounce from practitioner to practitioners and you're just not getting the answers that are moving the needle. So that's
yeah.
important.
My developmental pediatrician, when I went and had, like, my laundry list of questions that I kept asking, she kept going, "Well, this is just how autism develops. This is just how autism develops now. This is just," and I was, like, sitting there going, "That
Yeah.
can't be the answer to every single question," like, and she would just be like, "I don't know. That's just how autism develops now." It's like, well, like, I just felt like I literally got in the car and just started crying.
Yeah. Of
Just, like, so
course.
frustrated because 'cause I'm going to see the specialist. I'm going to see the expert who's going to be able to tell me and answer some of my questions. She couldn't even answer one question, so I just felt, like, so defeated. Like, I just felt like it wasn't even worth me asking anyone any other questions ever again because, like, if she couldn't answer them, who could?
Right. She is the developmental pediatrician. She should be able to help you. I know. And sometimes parents, I feel like they get turned off because of that. And then they stop looking for answers. Right. And it's so unfortunate.
I think it's also they get dismissed and just be like, "Well, why are you asking? This is just
Yeah.
autism. Like, stop asking these questions."
Right. Normal. I'm like, what? Yeah.
Yeah, it's like, "Okay, I guess you're the expert, you're right." I don't that's how I kept feeling.
Yeah. And it's sad because your son is so lucky because you kept looking for these answers. And for the parents, unfortunately, sometimes you're so overwhelmed, you don't have the bandwidth to keep digging, and sometimes don't have the resources to keep digging. And I just really wish that the system was a little bit different.
Agreed.
Yeah. So I'm gonna like kind of change the topic a little bit. I want to ask you about Marillax because I saw like a really funny reel that you did. And as an SLP, I work with picky eaters and with feeding in general. And just this recommendation for Marillax is constant. It's
Mhm.
constant. So many kids are on it. What's your take? Is this the answer to constipation?
No, because there's no such thing as a Miralax deficiency.
Yeah. Exactly.
I should just mostly change like, gastroenterologists should just be Miralax doctors from now on. Because if, like,
Seriously?
you're gonna go to a if I have had parents wait months to go to a GI doctor only to be told that this is constipation, give your kid Miralax. Like, and the parents are like, "What do you mean?" Like, "I waited months for you to just tell me to put my kid on Miralax." Like, that's they're not even looking for answers. Okay, did we remove dairy? Did we remove certain foods? Are we more carbohydrate heavy? Are we trying to improve hydration and fiber? Like, sometimes they'll get referred to, like, the in-house nutritionist or whatever, and then that's gonna take a couple another months to, like, get to, so it's kind of
Yeah.
like a round robin effect.
Yeah.
But no, constipation is a symptom that something is wrong on the inside because it's not normal.
Hmm.
So, that's where sometimes stool testing comes into play too, because I found a lot of the times, like, parents will be like, "They eat great, they're on fiber, they're, hydrated, like, we removed all these foods," and then we do a stool test and we go, "This is all out of whack," and once we fix it, constipation solved. Sometimes it's the body's just against itself, and other times, it could be a lot of other things, so but no, constipation isn't a Miralax deficiency, it's
It is
not.
not. It is not. Definitely. I know. Marillax, Pediasure. Oh my gosh, all these companies, they just drive me
No.
crazy.
It's
Yeah.
like it's like nails on a chalkboard.
Yeah, basically. Okay, so I have one more question for you. So when you zoom out and look at the whole child, what do you think matters most that we often miss?
Nutrition, to be honest. You know what I found? It was really funny. I had created an allergen-friendly meal plan. It was like, for 31 days, a breakfast and lunch, thing of, like, gluten, dairy, corn, soy free for a lot of my families, And it's just like different ways of plating food and different ways of like meals. And I had a mom reach out to me and she was like, "Thank you for creating this because I didn't grow up in a very nutrition conscious household and I had no idea how to actually make a proper meal for my kid." And I realized in that moment that I'm trained in this area. Not everybody else is trained in this area. So if a family doesn't know like what a portion size is for a kid, or should I focus more on protein on in this meal, or like how should I like what's a healthy meal? What's a considered a nutritious meal for a kid? So that's part of it where, sometimes parent people just don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, they really don't. That's a very good point. Okay, so Greer, thank you so much. I thought this was such a good conversation. So if anybody wanted to work with you or find you online, where can they look?
Biomedicalhealingforkids.com is my website. Biomedical Healing for Kids. I have an Instagram and a Facebook group if you want to join. And we just like to
Yeah.
talk and chat.
Amazing. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah.
Thanks so much for listening to the Livin'Sky podcast. If this episode resonated, please leave a quick 5-star review or share it with another parent who'd love it too. It really helps more families find the support that they need. And don't forget to join my newsletter at linalivin'sky.com for more tips and free guides. Sending a little sunshine to your kitchen today. See you next time.